world is veiled in darkness. The wind stops, the sea is wild, and the earth begins to rot. The people wait, their only hope, a prophecy. When the world is in darkness, 4 warriors will come. After a long journey, 4 young warriors arrive, each holding an orb. Hail and well met, adventurers. I am your host, the Dungeon Master, presenting you with yet another brand new Let's Play adventure. And this is truly a classic for the ages, as this is Let's Play Final Fantasy, the original Final Fantasy, released in 1987 by none other than Square, at a time in which this was a very crucial moment for Square. It was essentially sink or swim, and it was hoped that Final Fantasy would be the title that would enable them to keep going. Fortunately, Final Fantasy received such positivity and praise from its audience that Square were able to actually continue the series to this very day. But I'm going to be playing the original 1987 Final Fantasy for the Nintendo Entertainment System, also known as the NES or the Famicom, as it is in Japan. I actually attempted to tackle Final Fantasy roughly 9 years ago with the Dawn of Souls Game Boy Advance remake. However, since that time, and since that LP never really reached completion, I've taken it upon myself to actually start anew, because back then I was originally planning to delve through each of the classic Final Fantasy games, starting with Final Fantasy, then working my way through Final Fantasy II, Final Fantasy III, Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy V, and rounding off with Final Fantasy VI, which is the final game released 3 years before the advent of the iconic Final Fantasy VII, which celebrates 10 years of Final Fantasy. So what better way to start my journey on the road to 7 than with the original Final Fantasy adventure. Now, before I begin this quest, I'm going to increase the respond rate to 6. That basically means that text, the dialogue doesn't actually take too long to load. Basically, text boxes will appear and disappear depending on who is saying anything. If we leave it at 1, it's going to take a while for the respond rate to even do anything. But I believe this is enough rambling from me, so let us start a new game. But of course, before we embark upon any quest, one must always assemble a party of adventurers to be able to go on said quest, and this is the default assemblage for the classic Final Fantasy adventure. The fighter, the thief, the black belt, and the red mage. The way that the party is assembled in Final Fantasy, the top 2 rows are your frontline rows, and the lower 2 party members are in the back rows, which kind of interesting for its time. Things do change as the series progresses, but that's just the way it was back in 1987. Now, we can choose which class we can have our party members be. They're not relegated to just the default party. I think we can cycle through just by pressing left or right on the D-pad. So, this is pretty much going to be a video briefly explaining the character classes in general, and we might actually finally enter the world of Final Fantasy proper. Now, there are three melee classes and 3 spellcaster classes. The fighter, thief, and black belt are your melee attackers, with the fighter being the strongest, black belt being relatively decent, and the thief generally being not as strong as the first 2. but he is quick, although in the original version of Final Fantasy he's not as effective as he could be. He is a little bit better in the enhanced versions of Final Fantasy, but not in this classic version. So the fighter is going to be our mainline melee attacker. He can use the best weapons and carry the best armor in the game, and he pretty much will be leading the party from here on out. So as soon as I finish cycling, I want to give our esteemed fighter a name, and we only have 4 characters at our disposal, so I'm going to name the fighter Theo, and Theo he shall be. Now, I will not be using the Thief or the Black Belt in this instance. In fact, I'm actually going to be using the party that I used originally in my Dawn of Souls LP. But before I do that, allow me to explain the Thief and the Black Belt. The Thief, as I mentioned earlier, has quite a few quick attacks, although given the fact that he can't really use much armor, or he can use some weapons that the fighter can use, but not that much. He doesn't do as much damage, and in this version of Final Fantasy, he pretty much is not as good as he could be, as I explained. The Black Belt does a lot of melee attacks and is very effective. He can wear armor, although not the quality of the fighter, and he specializes mostly in hand-to-hand martial arts, and he's pretty efficient without armor, although he can wear some, as I just said before. But in this instance, I shall be taking the second row in the party as the Red Mage, which was the character class that I embarked upon in my Dawn of Souls LP. Our final 2 classes are the White Mage and the Black Mage. Now the White Mage, as soon as I get back to him, the White Mage is basically your party's healer, and he also has a few offensive spells, especially where undead creatures are concerned. But he mostly specializes in healing your party members and also helping them out with several spells that enhance their abilities, although certain status abilities and indeed certain statistics, such as the intelligence status, is doesn't really work in the NES version of Final Fantasy, so it doesn't really do anything. But I will be having a White Mage in the party, and I think I'm going to give him the name Adin, because I think that is a fairly decent name for a White Mage, and to join Adin in the back row will be his counterpart, the Black Mage. The Black Mage deals a lot of offensive spells, mostly elemental spells such as fire, lightning and ice, as well as a few status abilities, some which don't really work, some which will actually prove to be very effective, and he can pretty much learn all of the black magic in the game, just as the White Mage can learn all of the white magic in the entire adventure. Whereas my character class, the Red Mage, is relatively well-rounded, can use some of the weapons and equipment that the fighter can, and can cast a eclectic mix of white and black magic, although not nearly as specialized as the White Mage and Black Mage. But speaking of Black Mage, I should really give him a name, and that name is going to be Yazir. So there is our party, with Theo the fighter, myself the Red Mage, Adin the White Mage, and Yazir the Black Mage. And without further ado, our party of 4 is assembled and ready to embark upon this quest. So without further ado, let us enter the world of Final Fantasy. And we pretty much start right off the bat here, wherever here is. In fact, we don't even know who we are or how we got here. But all we do know is that we are on a journey, and the area that is currently north of us is the area that we are here to see. As to who brought us here, we have no idea about that. And we can bring up the main menu here. We're all pretty basic, level 1. We have a combined total of 400 gold, which gold being the currency that was used in the classic Final Fantasy games, although later on it was changed to the iconic monetary unit of gil, which I'm going to be referring to it as, since gold and gil pretty much start with G. Now, one thing to note is that we are in possession of 4 orbs as well. As to what these orbs do, we currently have no idea about that, because they're currently inert right now, yet they are in our possession, so they must be important. Now, interesting thing to note about magic in regards to mages is that there is no, even though there's a health bar, there is no MP bar. Instead, there are magic charges, which means that we can only cast a certain number of spells depending on our levels. And this would normally go along with the intelligence stat, but that's one of the many stats that are bugged in the original Final Fantasy. And we have items, magic, weapons, armor, and status. Well, we have nothing in terms of anything. We have no magic, no items. We pretty much have nothing but the clothes on our back, and there is Theo's status there. He has quite a lot of strength and vitality, not so much agility, intelligence, or luck. He's got 10 damage, 10 hit percentage, absorb 0 since he doesn't really have anything that deals with that, and an evasion percentage of 53. Now, as we equip certain armor and equipment, that evade will actually go down, and since our mages, such as Adin and Ysir, don't really require armor, we won't really, we'll be relying on their evade ability to get them out of a jam. And, as you can see, I have, I don't do quite as much damage, but my stats are pretty decent for a level 1 red mage. Adin, as a white mage, and as Ysir, I think also has an intelligence stat of 15, but it also, as I keep mentioning, does absolutely nothing in this version. And I'll just show off Ysir's stats there. He has 20 intelligence, if only it did something. But, well, we need to see what's going on here in this land, and try and get some equipment. And there is a castle over here, right in front of us. A castle that we shall venture into and have a look around. The king is looking for the Light Warriors. You do not happen to be there, do you? I wonder if he believes us to be the Light Warriors, or whether or not he's actually being skeptical that we might be the Light Warriors. Even we don't know whether or not we are these so-called Light Warriors in question. But that guard mentioned a king, so he is a person that we want to visit ASAP. And this guy pretty much says the same thing about the king searching for the Light Warriors. Well, let us go see the king of this place. Light Warriors. Just as in Lucan's prophecy, Garland has captured the princess. Please help her. Well, it seems the king has quite the ordeal. We need to rescue his daughter from a knight called Garland, who apparently lives in this land. guard says the exact same thing. I should mention, even though we, well, actually before that, let us have a look around the castle and see who else we can talk to in this place. Please save the princess. Well, we have our first quest on hand. That's, at least we know what to do. Garland used to be a good knight until, well, apologies for the way that I read that, but it seems that Garland was a knight of this particular castle and of the king. The princess was looking for you, says a person who is clearly invisible. Don't know what's going on there. But we have more to explore in this place, and there are 2 rooms down here. I've already spoken to this guard. Let us explore this room first. There is a person here. Oh, my sister. Well, there is the princess's sister, which means the king's second daughter, although we don't know her name. In sadness, the queen locked herself inside. That is not actually true, because that is a slight mistranslation due to localization, because as soon as we enter this room, by the way we can enter this room, like so, yeah, the queen shut herself inside rather than locking it. I am Jane, Queen of Cornelia. Please save my daughter, Princess Sarah. So we now finally have a name to this particular realm. Cornelia, or actually it's supposed to be Cornelia, it's supposed to be an L instead of an R. And sorry for the slight jumbled music there, but we still actually have well, we have a little bit left of the castle to explore, so before we actually head into town and get much needed equipment, we'll actually see what else this castle of Cornelia has to offer. That's because it pays to talk to everyone, and it also pays to get some sage advice, so that we know what's going on. 400 years ago, the treasury was locked by the mystic key. Our ancestors gave the key to the Prince of Elfland for safekeeping. That would be referring to these rooms here, neither of which we can actually enter into because they are locked by the mystic key, which is currently in possession of the Prince of Elfland, or I believe it's supposed to be called Elfheim. And that is all there is to explore in the castle of Cornelia for the time being. So without further ado, adventurers, let us explore the town of Cornelia. What a wonderful sight. And there is a person over here. This is Cornelia, the Dream City. It's seems like a nice place to stop by. And there are a few stores around town. I am Arlian the Dancer. Nice to make your acquaintance there. Warriors, revive the power of the orbs. That seems like another quest that we're going to have to fulfill at some point, but first we'll need to rescue Princess Sarah, and in order to do that we need to actually purchase some equipment. Now, here is a weapons store, and have some items here. We have a wooden staff, a small dagger, wooden nunchucks, which I'm never going to purchase because I don't have a black belt in my party, a rapier sword, which will be good for Theo and myself, and an iron hammer, which will actually be beneficial to Theo since he can, to Adden, sorry, not Theo, because Adden, as a white mage, can actually use hammers, which is kind of strange. But since we have plenty of gold, I shall purchase 2 rapiers for Theo and myself. Buy a wooden staff for Ysir, because even though a small dagger would actually be slightly better for him, I think Ysir can hold his own with a staff. He is a mage after all, so that would be useful, but we want to actually purchase an iron hammer for Adin here, so that he can actually do some damage, even though he'll mostly be relegated to doing magic. Now of course, we need to make sure all of our weapons are readied so that we can actually use them in combat, but of course, what good is weapons without armor to back them up? So, we can use some chain armor on Theo, and do I actually want to, I could wonder if it's worth buying cloth for Adin and Ysir, because even if I do so, that might offer them a small amount of protection, but their evade might go down as a consequence. But and also I need some gold to actually, some gil to actually purchase some other things that I'm definitely going to be needing for this particular adventure. Yeah, probably a mistake on my part, but I'm going to purchase some wooden armor just in case, because I don't think I can use the chain armor unless I'm mistaken. Actually, you know what? We'll trade and see if oh, I can. Oh, that was a mistake. Never mind. I can equip it. Oh well. I'll do with the wooden armor for the time being, and I have 235 gil left. But we need to actually purchase some magic for our mages to use, otherwise they're not going to be too effective in battle. As soon as Alien gets out of the way here, I can show off, thank you, I can show off this particular building, which I believe is called a clinic. But we don't need help with the clinic right now, because the clinic is your only means of actually resurrecting party members that have fallen in battle. Because, believe it or not, adventurers, there are no Phoenix Downs whatsoever in the original Final Fantasy adventure. So, and there is an item shop for which we can buy potions, which we are desperately going to need. And, nothing on the ground there. Someone worried about Princess Sarah. Now, this store here is where we can purchase white magic spells, and this store here sells black magic spells. We'll want to get one of each. Now, Adin will want to purchase some spells. There are 4 spells that we can actually acquire. Cure, which is basic healing. Harm, which deals damage to undead. Fog, which does status ailment, which probably does nothing. And Ruse, which we're probably not going to acquire in this instance, but healing is important. And all these spells cost 100 gil, so we'll eventually have to go out and fight some monsters at some point, because what's a quest that does not have monsters? Now, these spells are interesting. We've got fire and lightning, or lit, at the bottom of the menu there. We have sleep, which actually does something, believe it or not, and lock, which is either has to do with opening locks, or another status ability or something. But I shall purchase fire for Ysir so that he actually has a chance in battle. And let's talk to the other townsfolk. Lucan left this town to join his colleagues at Crescent Lake, so Lucan is still alive. The man responsible for the prophecy about the 4 warriors, which are actually supposed to be known as the Warriors of Light, I believe. The king is sure that someday the Light Warriors will come to save the princess, just as in Lucan's prophecy. I wonder if we'll meet Lucan at some point. We will do that in due time. And the store right here is the item store, which, as I mentioned, we can use to buy potions. We can purchase heal potions, which restore health, pure potions, which are antidotes, and tent allows us to make camp and heal our health, and we don't really have enough gil to buy any of them whatsoever. And there is you, over here. My home is Provoker, a beautiful port city far east of here. That is definitely a destination that we can go to. And I believe that is everything that we can actually find in Cornelia, except there is one last area, the inn here, which, believe it or not, sleeping at an inn not only restores your health, but it is the main way to save your data. In fact, in the classic NES days, it was the only way to save your data. But I don't believe we need to rest here. Hold reset while you turn power off. Yeah, you had to do that in order to make sure that your data was actually saved when using an actual NES, but I think we're pretty lively and ready for anything that comes our way for the moment. So, when we return, adventurers, I believe we shall finally get some fighting along the way to prepare ourselves for the eventual battle with the fallen Knight Garland, because we will have to face him at some point in order to rescue Princess Sarah. As always, adventurers, I'm the Dungeon Master. Until next we meet.